Have you ever tried your best to help someone out only to realize that for whatever reason they can't accept help? Of course, if you're running your own kingdom, the stakes get pretty high. In Adventure Time, there's an arc spanning several episodes that deals with Bubblegum's attempts to help and then simply deal with the impossible Earl of Lemongrab. Lemongrab first appears in the episode Too Young, where it's established that he is her creation. It's the old archetype of the mad scientist's creation running amok.
The monster is turned loose to strike terror into the hearts of men. Frankenstein!
At the end of the episode You Made Me, PB creates a twin for Lemongrab in the hopes the twin will balance the off-kilter Earl and stop him hurting others. Unfortunately, you can't help someone who won't help themselves. In All Your Fault, we see the twins' company-made Lemongrab about as stable as a bombed-out city. And speaking of cities, it's in All Your Fault that we get a concrete glimpse at the horrors of the type of society Lemongrab can create. So let's dive into that episode in depth. All Your Fault opens with PB reading a letter from both the Earls of Lemongrab, who are demanding more candy. Complaining she left them a lifetime supply of candy, she nevertheless sends Finn and Jake with candy for the Earls. When Finn and Jake arrive in the Earldom, they see a chaotic dystopia populated by starving lemon people. The first calm person they meet is Lemon John, who tells them the Earls are in the dungeon. Finn and Jake's attempt to free the Earls is anticlimactic because the Earls locked themselves in the dungeon with their remaining food supply. Turns out the Earls found one of PB's life-granting formulas and used it to turn all their candy supply into new life. The starving citizens. When Jake gives the Earls the new candy, they immediately use it up to make more lemon citizens. Before Finn and Jake know it, the Earls have hatched a plan to take even more candy from the Candy Kingdom. The only observably intelligent lemon person, Lemon John, is big enough to lift the whole lemon fortress and walk it over to the Candy Kingdom. To prevent the attack, Finn and Jake try to stop Lemon John's exposed heart. Instead, they find out that the heart had not been beating, and now they've started it pumping. However, rather than making Lemon John more dangerous, the working heart makes him compassionate and leads him to dissolve himself to stop the invasion. In the end, PB erases information of her life-giving formula from the Lemongrab's minds, a quick fix to their brains. Jake suggests PB fix their hearts while she's at it, but she admits she can't. Their hearts are fine, she says, they're just built this way. You know the old saying, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Imagine lemonade. It comes to cool you.
Of course, in Lemongrab's case, PB's efforts to make the best of things tend to backfire. Bubblegum's optimism towards Lemongrab, at least at first, indicates that she really struggles to come to terms with Lemongrab's true nature, and that's understandable. In a later episode, Lemongrab literally eats his own brother. I'd say that's hard to understand for any non-psychopath. Regardless, All Your Fault links with narrative themes common in the Gothic horror genre, summarized as the grotesque by Maximilian E. Novak in his essay Gothic Fiction and the Grotesque. In Novak's view, the grotesque, and by extension Gothic fiction, is all about the emotion of disgust. Think of Lemongrab's menacing fortress in All Your Fault, filled with demonic-looking and chaotic creatures. According to Novak, the grotesque suggests an underlying reality that ought not be confronted too often if we are to preserve our belief in civilized values. It's understandable that Bubblegum, the quintessential civilized ruler, perhaps the most rationalistic and governance-obsessed character in Adventure Time, struggles to confront how badly Lemongrab deviates from her ideal. He is the ultimate uncivilized and unethical creature, yet he wants his own fiefdom. In narrative terms, this unfortunate disaster is represented in All Your Fault by the oblique use of Gothic tropes, the ominous decaying fortress, the hideously deformed and monstrous creatures that inhabit it, and perhaps most uncomfortably, the arguable mental dysfunction that afflicts both the ruler and his subjects. Lemon John's non-functioning heart is visually grotesque, but it also reflects a personality that developed without compassion. Lemon John self-destructs when confronted with the reality of his situation. That's grotesque in a completely different way, in that it depicts Lemon John confronting a morally impossible situation that he can't escape other than by death. According to Novak, the demons of the Gothic, real, imagined, or fabricated, represent a sudden revelation of the uncontrollable forces of the mind, as they are reified in the seemingly ordered real world. In essence, in Gothic narratives, demons and other manifestations of the grotesque represent dark and twisted elements of humanity that can threaten all of us. For PB, the character most focused on control, order, and the sweetness of society, her biggest blind spot is the hidden dark side of her own nature and her own society. In the world of Adventure Time, the lemon candy citizens of Lemongrab's domain are superficially the polar opposite of the relatively stable, not to mention superficially adorable, society of the Candy Kingdom. Of course, the Candy Kingdom does have moments of instability, one example being when they kick out Bubblegum and then descend into anarchy in the episode Hot Diggity Doom, which I covered in a recent video. You could say the chaotic and dysfunctional side of the Candy Citizens is mostly kept under control in the Candy Kingdom, whereas Lemongrab unleashes it in full. In All Your Faults, Lemongrab is shown to be disturbingly self-destructive. When Finn and Jake found him, he was on the verge of starving to death. Ironically, Finn and Jake's attempts to help accidentally gave Lemongrab and his twin an opportunity to invade the Candy Kingdom. Ironically, one of PB's biggest fears is to lose her home to an enemy like the Fire Kingdom, and yet she created a whole new enemy right on her doorstep. Not only that, it's a new society defined by suffering. Lemongrab and his twin are finally destroyed in the story Lemon Hope, but detailed discussion there would be a subject for another video. The episode All Your Fault stands out as a particularly creepy look at the pure mayhem Lemongrab unleashes when left to his own devices. PB's attempts to help Lemongrab always disastrously backfire, which he of course says is all her fault. And this is at the heart of why Lemongrab is PB's biggest failure. No matter how much she tries to help him, he spirals out of control and drags down anyone unlucky enough to get near him. Unfortunately, you can't help someone who won't help themselves. Cards on the table, I really relate to PB as a character. I relate to the way she has a rationalistic, analytical way of looking at things, which doesn't always work. Could she have rationally predicted how destructive Lemongrab could become? I'd argue not. To know the worst someone is capable of, sometimes you have to see it. That's why, although I think Lemongrab is PB's biggest failure, he's an understandable one. That wraps up my thoughts about PB's unsettling relationship with Lemongrab. If you enjoyed my thoughts on the vilest lemon candy in the history of animation, you can help the channel by liking and subscribing. Thank you to those of you who've subscribed already. Have a great week, embrace the weird, and thank you for watching. And don't forget, PB has an itch for mad science that nothing seems to entirely scratch. So while Lemongrab was a horrific creation, in the future PB may create something even worse.